The Bills walked out with a win, but if you watched the game closely, you probably felt something else lurking underneath the scoreboard. A kind of uneasy tension, because even though Buffalo added another victory to the column, the performance on the field didn't look like the kind of football you expect from a team with playoff expectations. Instead, it felt like a team constantly battling two opponents at once, the one on the other sideline, and the one living inside their own inconsistencies. And that's what made Sean McDermott's post-game comments so revealing. He praised the toughness, he highlighted the takeaways, he pointed out the big stops in the fourth quarter, but woven between those positives were the same warnings Bills fans have been hearing all season. We need to do the basics better. We have to clean up fundamentals. There's plenty to work on. Those aren't small concerns. Those are red flags. Because while players like Greg Rousseau, Jordan Poyer, and James Cook stepped up with game-changing moments, the entire identity of the team still feels shaky. One half looks sharp, the next goes silent. One drive is explosive, the next is stuck behind the chains. The WRs are blocking more than they're catching, and the third down issues refuse to go away. Yes, a win is a win, but this one felt like Buffalo escaped, not dominated. And when a team with this much talent keeps showing this many cracks, you're forced to ask a bigger question. Is Buffalo winning because they're good, or because their stars are bailing them out? For most of the afternoon, the Bills' defense felt like it was chasing the game, reacting, adjusting, trying to hold things together while the Browns leaned into their run game and short passing rhythm. But when the fourth quarter hit, Greg Rousseau flipped the entire momentum by himself. It wasn't just a strong finish, it was a takeover. The kind of stretch where one player looks like he's operating at a completely different speed than everyone else on the field. McDermott didn't hide it either. The moment he stepped to the podium, the first name he spotlighted was Rousseau. The grounding penalty he forced, massive. The pressures he generated on crucial downs, game-altering. The Bills needed someone to step forward, and Rousseau delivered exactly the kind of presence they've been waiting to see consistently all season. But that's the key word, consistency. Because while Rousseau's fourth quarter explosion saved Buffalo, it also highlighted something fans have quietly worried about. This defense still depends too heavily on individual hero moments. One week it's Poyer, another week it's Milano. This time it was Rousseau stepping into the spotlight, but rarely is the unit humming as a complete machine from start to finish. Even McDermott hinted at that tension. He praised the production, but immediately followed it with reminders about basic fundamentals, inconsistency, and things we have to clean up. That's not the tone of a coach thrilled with 4 quarters of discipline. That's the tone of a coach relieved his team found just enough at the very end. And it raises a deeper question. What happens on the days when Buffalo doesn't get that late spark? What happens when the opposing quarterback avoids that one misplaced step, or the pocket holds up for 1 extra second, or the game doesn't hand Buffalo a moment to capitalize on? Because relying on standout plays isn't a sustainable identity. It's a gamble that works until it doesn't. Rousseau's dominance showed what the Bills can be defensively, but it also exposed how often they need someone to bail them out just to close games they should already control. And unfortunately for Buffalo, Rousseau wasn't the only part of the team forced to play hero. If you chart the Bills' defensive performance quarter by quarter, a pattern jumps out immediately. This unit isn't dominating games from start to finish. Instead, it's surviving long stretches of inconsistency and then erupting with just enough high-impact plays to tilt the outcome. And while that might work against a team struggling with injuries like Cleveland, it's a formula that becomes dangerous when the competition gets tougher. McDermott acknowledged that reality without fully saying it. He praised the takeaways, the late stops, and the ability to show up when it mattered. But even in his compliments, there was a steady drip of concern. Because the truth is simple. The Bills needed those big defensive plays because they were losing control earlier in the game. Take the Browns' run success. Cleveland came in missing key pieces on their offensive line, missing their star running back, and still found ways to gash Buffalo on the ground. James Cook's long touchdown might have stolen the highlight, but the Browns were moving the ball with ease in the first half. Missed fits, poor gap control, and late adjustments allowed a depleted offense to stay alive far longer than they should have. And that's the problem. The Bills aren't dictating games. They're responding to them. Even McDermott admitted they can't allow a team to do what they did. That's not coach speak for a minor detail. They know the defensive identity that once defined this team isn't showing up early enough. The unit that used to force opponents into predictable situations is now allowing comfortable first downs, chunk gains, and long drives before finally tightening up in desperation moments. The takeaways help. The late fourth down stop helps. Rouso's surge helps. But when your defense has to rely on clutch plays to escape situations you put yourself in, it's hard to call that sustainable football. And that leads to a growing speculation around the league. Are the Bills quietly becoming a bend until someone saves us defense? It's not just a fan theory. Analysts have pointed out the same trend. Instead of overwhelming opponents, Buffalo lets them hang around long enough to create unnecessary drama every single week. The defense isn't broken, but it's no longer the stable foundation this team used to lean on. Now it's a unit that flashes brilliance only after long stretches of uneven execution. And that inconsistency bleeds directly into the next issue, the identity crisis forming on Buffalo's offense. If you only watched the Bills' opening drive, you'd think this offense had finally turned the corner. The rhythm was there. The balance was there. Josh Allen looked controlled, confident, and in command. For a moment, everything felt like the version of Buffalo fans have been begging to see all season. But then the script ended, and so did the consistency. The second half exposed the identity crisis that keeps dragging this offense into unnecessary dogfights. McDermott admitted it without hesitation. The first half was smooth because they avoided third downs entirely. Only 2. That's it. They stayed ahead of the chains, mixed runs and passes, and neutralized Cleveland's pass rush. It was the blueprint everyone expected them to build on. Instead, they abandoned it. Suddenly, the Bills were starring at third and long after third and long, forced into predictable passing situations against one of the league's most dangerous rushers. And that's when the offense curled back into the same frustrating habits: slow developing plays, protection breakdowns, and missed opportunities that kept letting the Browns off the hook. People will remember the explosive moments, the deep shots, the long run, the key throws, but the story of this offense is the empty space between them. Too many drives stall for reasons that shouldn't happen to a team with this much talent. Part of the issue is structural. Buffalo wants to be a two-dimensional offense, but they don't always commit to it. McDermott mentioned the importance of running the ball to avoid dropping back too often against Myles Garrett, and he's right. When they stay balanced, everything opens up. But as the pressure builds and the game tightens, the Bills lean heavily back into Josh Allen hero mode, and the rhythm disappears. Another part is execution. The receivers blocked well, but the passing game felt out of sync. The protection wavered. Timing was inconsistent. And those small cracks turn into stalled drives, which turn into momentum swings, which turn into games that should be comfortable becoming nail-biters instead. Rumors around the league have quietly suggested the Bills are dealing with a trust problem on offense, not between players, but between strategy and identity. They want to be explosive, but they also want to be disciplined. They want Josh Allen unleashed, but they also want him controlled. And trying to be both at the same time leaves them stuck in between. The offense isn't broken, but it's conflicted, and that confusion set the stage for the next issue, one that keeps showing up every single week, no matter how much talent this team has. What happened to the Browns in this game wasn't just bad execution, It was a complete unraveling that pointed straight back to the coaching staff, and anyone watching could feel it happening in real time. Every time Cleveland had a chance to stabilize, something went wrong. Not because they were outmatched, but because their operation kept tripping over itself. The injuries were real. Losing Quinshon Judkins, rotating through offensive linemen, relying on depth players who weren't supposed to see this many snaps. None of that can be ignored. But even with those setbacks, the Browns were very much in this game. The problem is that they kept giving the Bills free windows to steal momentum, and those breakdowns came from the sideline more than the field. Look at the field goal disaster before halftime. Buffalo practically handed Cleveland 3 points, a gift wrapped in time management and defensive mistakes. And instead of taking the points and walking into the locker room with momentum, the Browns couldn't even get the snap right. That's not talent. That's not injuries. That's a team that's poorly prepared and poorly coordinated in critical moments. Then there was the 4th and 2 fiasco. Stefanski said he felt good about the play call, but the play itself gave Shaduer Sanders no chance, a slow-developing dropback behind a collapsing line, against a defense expecting exactly that. When 68 gets blown up instantly and your quarterback is under fire before his back foot hits the turf, that's not aggression. That's malpractice. Fans aren't imagining the sabotage talk. Speculation online has been growing for weeks that Stefanski and his staff are quietly losing control of the locker room. Reports claim players are frustrated with inconsistent game plans, confusing decision-making, and an offense that changes identity every quarter. Whether those rumors are accurate or not, the on-field product looks exactly like a team without direction. What makes it worse is the pattern. Every week the Browns lose games the same way: operational failures, botched situational football, and coaching decisions that leave players hanging out to dry. That's why frustration is boiling over. It's not the losing itself, it's how they lose. And this latest collapse may be the breaking point, because everything that went wrong in this game leads into the next question, one that Cleveland can't keep avoiding. In the middle of all this chaos, one thing stood out. Shaduer Sanders kept showing exactly why so many fans believe he's the future, even when everything around him is working against him. And that's what makes his performance so fascinating. It wasn't perfect, far from it, but it revealed something the box score will never show: a young quarterback who's growing faster than the organization knows how to handle. From the opening snaps, Shaduer played with a level of decisiveness that critics claimed he didn't have. He got the ball out quicker, avoided the usual hesitation, and made smart reads that kept the offense moving. The first half showed a version of Shaduer people have been begging to see: controlled, confident, and willing to take what the defense gave him. He even used his legs in ways most didn't expect, leading the team in rushing once again. For a guy labeled not athletic enough, he sure made a lot of defenders miss. But here, where things get complicated, 2 of his interceptions weren't the result of bad judgment. They were the kind of freak ricochets and deflections that happen when a quarterback is pressured constantly and forced into tight windows. Reports claim the coaching staff is frustrated with these turnovers, but anyone actually watching the film knows these weren't rookie mistakes. They were the byproduct of a collapsing offensive line and receivers who struggled to create separation or secure the ball. Yet even with those setbacks, Shaduer kept fighting. He pushed through a pinky injury, extended plays when the pocket fell apart, and kept giving his team chances late in the game. That type of resilience isn't something you can coach. It's something you're born with. And it's exactly why so many people believe he's being dragged down by the situation instead of being developed properly. There's a growing belief, especially online, that Shaduer is outperforming the support around him. Fans are wondering how much more he could do with real protection, stable coaching, and receivers who consistently win their matchups. It's not speculation to say he's improving. It's visible every single week. What is speculation is whether the organization recognizes that growth, or if they're too busy trying to cover for their own mistakes. And that tension sets the stage for the next major question about this team. Because if Shaduer is rising while everything else is falling apart, something has to give. The Bills didn't just win this game, they exposed every weakness the Browns have been trying to hide. And the most surprising part is that Buffalo didn't even need a flawless performance to do it. They simply capitalized on problems Cleveland has refused to fix, problems that have shown up in every loss this season. It was like watching the same movie play out again, just with a different opponent and a slightly different script. Rousseau was the perfect example. For most of the year, he's been solid but not dominant. Yet in this game, he looked like a superstar. Reports claim the Bills' coaching staff noticed early that Cleveland's offensive line was struggling with communication and leverage, and they told Rousseau to attack those weak points with raw power. The result? A fourth quarter where he practically lived in the Browns' backfield. It wasn't a mystery, it was a blueprint. And it worked because Cleveland had no counterpunch. The run defense meltdown was just as telling. James Cook didn't just have a good day, he had the kind of performance that exposes a defense's discipline issues. Cleveland's linebackers overpursued, their edges lost contain, and their tackling form broke down whenever Cook changed direction. And while the Browns fixed some of it in the second half, the early damage made it clear that this defense still hasn't figured out how to adjust on the fly. Even Buffalo's passing game didn't need to be perfect. Josh Allen made mistakes, took bad sacks, and had stretches where he looked out of rhythm. But Cleveland couldn't make him pay for it. Every time the Browns needed one big defensive stop, someone blew a coverage, lost a matchup, or allowed Allen to escape. That's not talent, that's preparation, or the lack of it. And the most frustrating part, this game should have been Cleveland's. The Bills gave them windows, multiple, generous windows, to seize momentum. Missed field goals, stalled drives, and questionable decisions kept the door open longer than it should have been. Yet the Browns never stepped through. It wasn't because they were outclassed. It was because they were out-executed and out-coached at the moments that mattered most. So while Buffalo walks away with a win, Cleveland walks away with something far more important. A clear, undeniable picture of what's wrong. And that picture is going to force some uncomfortable conversations, especially when the film room lights turn on this week. What makes this loss sting the most isn't the score, it's the identity crisis it exposed. The Browns aren't a team without talent. They're a team without direction. And that difference is what separates competitive franchises from ones that constantly hover in the middle of the pack, hoping something magically clicks. Right now, Cleveland looks like a collection of players waiting for a plan that never arrives. You see it in the way the offense functions. One week they look committed to a balanced attack, using quick passes and creative motion to help Shaduer settle in. The next week, it's like the entire playbook gets flipped upside down. Fans have noticed it. Analysts have noticed it. Even former players have hinted that the Browns don't have an offensive identity. They just have ideas tossed at the wall, hopping one sticks. And when your quarterback is a rookie trying to learn the league, inconsistency is the fastest way to sabotage his development. The defense isn't immune either. At times, they look elite, fast, aggressive, disruptive. But then comes the other version, the one that forgets how to tackle, loses contain, and gives up chunk plays that deflate the entire stadium. Reports claim there's growing frustration behind the scenes about communication issues, especially with so many young players rotating in due to injuries. Whether that's true or not, the product on the field reflects a unit that's not aligned. Even the special teams, normally a quiet strength, cracked under pressure. A botched field goal before halftime might seem like one mistake, but it represented something bigger. A team that can't execute basic operations when the moment is tight. And in a 3-point loss, those details aren't small, they're everything. This all circles back to leadership. A team with talent but no cohesion almost always points to the same problem. Nobody is setting a clear standard. Nobody is taking control of the identity. Shaduer Sanders is trying. His interviews show maturity and accountability beyond his years. But a rookie QB shouldn't be the one holding the team together mentally. That responsibility lands on the coaching staff, and right now, they're not delivering. What Cleveland desperately needs is a blueprint, a real one. Something that defines who they are offensively, defensively, and culturally. Because until that's established, games like this won't feel surprising. They'll feel predictable. The most unsettling part of this entire situation is that the Browns aren't just losing games, they're losing clarity. Week after week, the same issues return, disguised in different plays and different matchups, but always leading to the same conclusion. And now, with pressure building from fans, media, and possibly inside the organization itself, Cleveland has reached a true crossroads. What they decide next could determine the future of the franchise for years. It starts with coaching. Rumors suggest some decision makers are already questioning whether the current staff can develop a young quarterback, manage in-game adjustments, or maintain operational discipline. Nothing has been confirmed, but the whispers keep growing louder each time the Browns collapse in a winnable game. And while speculation isn't fact, it does reflect a real sentiment. Trust is fading. You can see it in the sideline body language, the inconsistent execution, and the players having to answer questions that should be directed at their coaches. Then there's the roster puzzle. Cleveland has talent, but not balance. Injuries have forced depth players into starting roles, exposing how thin the margin for error truly is. The offensive line changes every week, the receiving core struggles to separate, and the running back room has been decimated. None of that excuses the losses, but it does paint a picture of a team trying to build a skyscraper on a cracked foundation. Until the front office rebuilds the core, protection, weapons, and stability, development will always feel like an uphill battle. And in the middle of this storm stands Shaduer Sanders, quietly becoming the most important variable in the organization. Every flash of brilliance raises the stakes. Every improvement adds weight to the decisions being made around him. If he continues to grow despite the circumstances, the team will feel obligated to restructure everything around him. If he struggles because of those circumstances, the critics will blame him instead of the environment. It's a delicate balance, and one Cleveland hasn't handled well historically. The truth is simple: the Browns can't stay in limbo. They either commit to a real rebuild around Shedeur, reshaping the coaching staff and roster to support him, or they continue patching holes and hopping for different results. One path leads to progress. The other leads back to the same cycle fans have endured for decades. This is the moment where direction matters. This is where leadership matters. Because if the Browns don't take control of their future now, someone else, whether it's the division, the media, or their own mistakes, will decide it for them. At some point, a franchise has to stop pretending its problems are temporary. And for the Cleveland Browns, that moment has arrived. This isn't just another frustrating loss or another wasted Sunday. It's a flashing warning sign that the team, as currently constructed and coached, has reached its limit. Everything that unfolded, the missed opportunities, the shaky preparation, the inconsistent execution, revealed a deeper issue that goes beyond a single game. It exposed a culture that's stuck between wanting to compete and not knowing how to grow. For fans, this story feels painfully familiar. Hope sparks, talent flashes, a few drives look promising, and then the same cracks reappear. A botched field goal, a questionable fourth down call, a stalled drive because protection breaks down or routes don't develop in sync. These moments don't happen because the Browns lack potential. They happen because potential isn't enough without structure, identity, and accountability. And until those things exist at the top, they can't exist on the field. What makes this crossroads even more critical is the presence of Shaduer Sanders. Whether people admit it or not, he's become the anchor of the franchise's future conversations. Not because he's a superstar already, but because he's showing the traits, toughness, composure, growth, that winning organizations build around. Every game he survives behind a patchwork line. Every play he extends when the scheme breaks down. Every adjustment he makes week to week sends a message. He's trying to evolve. The question is whether the team around him will evolve with him. Reports claim the front office is divided. Some want patience, arguing that the injuries and youth explain the inconsistency. Others believe a major reset is needed, starting with the coaching staff. None of that has been confirmed, but the tension is impossible to ignore. When a franchise keeps repeating the same mistakes, eventually, the responsibility shifts from the players to the people designing the plan. This loss should be the jolt that finally forces Cleveland to confront reality. Not the scoreboard, the structure. Not the interceptions, the environment. Not the talent, the leadership guiding it. Because if the Browns don't make bold, decisive choices now, they risk wasting not just a season but a rare chance to build something meaningful. The door is still open for a turnaround, but only if the organization stops hoping things improve on their own and starts creating a future that doesn't rely on luck.